Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the September 2024 session of the From the Bench Virtual Studio Tour Series. My name is Sarah Songer, and I'm the Program and Studio Manager at the San Francisco Center for the Book. And today I'm excited to introduce Molly C. Meng as our guest. Molly is an artist, teacher, storyteller, and collector living in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Molly studied literature with a personal minor in collecting other people's lives. An obsession with old ledgers, vintage photos, and every single discarded book that exists, her work reimagines the untold stories behind the otherwise forgotten items of every day. Thank you so much, Molly.
Thanks, thanks. Oh, I'm so excited. Thanks everybody for being here. Um, this is really fun. So I had started to put together photos and thought, okay, I've got to figure out how to do a slideshow and a PowerPoint, and I am not those things. So I'm going to show you a little slideshow that happens in my photos. And I tried to narrow down as best I could and sort of do an outline of early work and things that sort of represent a lot of what I think my work is about. And I'm not great at I've never been great about talking about what I do. People are like, "Oh, what kind of art do you make?" I'm like, "I don't know." But, given the opportunity, it's great to have a visual with it. So I feel like, a picture's worth 1,000 words, and that's kind of what I'm doing here. So the slideshow, takes a few minutes. I think it's like 3 minutes long, and you might see things in there that, you have a question about or wonder about that I might not be able to explain quick enough as it comes up. But feel free to jot down a note and be like, "Hey, what was that thing?" And I think if need be, I can go back to the photos also and we can pull them up one at a time if we want to look at things more specifically. I also brought some work here. I don't own a lot of my work anymore. I will say that most of the work I've made over the last 20 years has sold, and that was kind of my intention is it or given away. And that's always sort of been my intention with work is I'm not looking to hang on to it. And so um you might not know where it comes up in the slideshow, but I do this little thing called messages from Molly. And I hashtag it on Instagram and do that kind of thing. But when I make something that I don't love or that that I don't think is right anymore for the way I want something to be shown, I take that thing and I go out into the world and I tape it somewhere, or I nail it to a lamppost, or I leave it in a library book. There are probably half a dozen books in the library at Pratt when my niece used to go there that someday will have you'll come across that book and there's a little message from Molly in there. Um, or I leave them on the street or where people can find them. And um, I love doing it. I love the idea of someone coming upon, like being in a park and sitting down on a park bench and looking next to them and finding this little quote that says, today's a better day or something like that, or today's the day or whatever the quote is. And so I've done it at jury duty. I left it on the benches, on the chairs at jury duty. I leave them in buses when I used to ride the bus in San Francisco and Los Angeles. Um, I leave them out on walks. Uh, and then sometimes I employ people to make the messages with me that I have leftover materials of something, and you'll see a picture of two young girls that are the kids of a friend of mine. And I had all this leftover cardboard from a project, and we painted and made signs that we put up all over the neighborhood that just say things like, "You are loved," or, "Kindness is great," and that kind of thing. And then there's another couple items in there in the slideshow that you'll see that are like these big craft paper hand painted signs. And I'm not a great printer or drawer or anything. And so my hand painting is really pretty childish like, which is, I think, true of a lot of my work too. Um, But during the pandemic, I thought it was really important when we couldn't actually be together and see each other in person to put these kind of messages of hope out there. And at the time, I lived in Los Angeles, and I'd sit in the backyard with my dogs and paint these signs and then hang them on this fence that had this empty lot. Nothing was in the lot. And so I'd hang them on the fence and they'd stay up there until, the rain destroyed them and I would go and take them down. And another one of the projects you'll see on that fence is I called Sentences with Strangers. And I painted all these pink cardboard. I painted all these cardboard and then in pink and words. And I made up sentences in my head and then painted those words on each one of those things of cardboard. And then I poked a hole in each one of those cardboards, put a little hook on it. And then I went and hooked all the words on the fence. And I put up a big sign that says, even though we can't be near each other, I think it's a great idea to leave each other messages of hope and wonder and curiosity. So, oh gosh, and then I just realized, I just remembered, you'll see another slide. You might not catch it right away. It's all these little boxes, but I went to IKEA one day with like 20 of these little messages from Molly, these little scraps of not scraps. And I hid them all over IKEA. And I posted about it, and I had 3 or 4 people text me and say, "I went to IKEA. I got those." And I was like, "Oh, that's not what I thought was gonna happen. Dudes, I just thought that was out there for whoever." How IKEA can kind of be a shit show. And so I thought they'd be nice things to, energize people getting through their IKEA day. So with that, I will start the slideshow and then I'll kind of review what was through the slideshow. Um, Again, anything you guys want, but actually, I had said this to Sarah, and I think it's a good way to do it. The slideshow starts, and it's early work of mine, right? So it's I collected a lot of vintage photos. I do own thousands of vintage photos. Many other people's families are sent to me. When I die, no one's going to know who the heck I am because I own so many other people's families. Um, and so you'll see a shot in there that has a bunch of vintage photos. And so the beginning is a little bit of early work. There's a flag piece that I think in the slideshow it might be kind of small, but in fact, it's one of at the time, it was the first solo art show I had, and it's a rather large piece. And it's made from, the stripes are made from my great grandfather's land deeds. So my mom, who grew up in Wisconsin, gave me a big stack of these land deeds, and I created this flag piece. And unbeknownst to me at the time, my parents secretly bought the piece from the gallery. And so when I walked into the opening night of the show and saw that that piece was sold, I was like, what that show hasn't even opened yet. How is that piece sold? And the gallerist said to me, oh, somebody called me and bought the piece. So that piece now lives with my mom in my parents' home. And I love it because it's her grandfather's land deeds and it's back with her. You'll see a lot of typed up pieces. I own a number of old typewriters, probably more than the average bear or than needs be. And I type up a lot. So I type on vintage playing cards. I type on layered book pages. I type on fabric that I've made to look like old notebook paper. I literally put the fabric through the typewriter and type on those. I love typewriters. I love anything analog. And so that's kind of what that grew from. I also love quotes. I love quotes. Since I was a little kid, I've kept little scraps of quotes. I have book after book after book of all these little scraps of quotes that I've torn out from magazines and books and things. And so I use quotes. I use other people's wise words, things that I couldn't possibly come up with in my work. And all of the artists are anyone that said the quote is acknowledged on the piece, but you won't see that in the slideshow. And then you'll see a bunch of collage. Collage is probably one of the first things I started with. It's still one of my most favorite things to teach and be involved in. And it's what I go to when I don't know what else to do. And just am like, let's collage. And I Color is the driving force behind my collage. And so you'll see a lot of really colorful collages in the slideshow. Um, there's a number of shadow boxes. So there was a time period where I solely did shadow boxes. So you'll see things like this, and I invented people's lives, which I tend to do pretty often. And you'll see a number of boxes from a series that I did where I invented 4 people's lives and the 4 stages of their lives, all in box form. Oh, and then I had kind of mentioned that I hide a lot of secrets in pieces. I often pencil things in or type things in and hide them under other things, so you'll never see them. So you don't actually know they're there unless I tell you that, which drives my husband crazy and sometimes drives other people crazy, but I love it. And I'm a big proponent of when I teach, I say to people, throw something secret in there, something only you are going to know about. I'm never going to know, the person that looks at this piece, but you're going to know. You're going to walk up to that piece and be like, huh, you know what it says behind that? It says my father's birth date and his favorite saying. And only you need to know. Like, I think that is just, I love that. Um, okay, I've had a lot of art shows. And I've had a number of solo art shows, and I've done a ton of group art shows. I don't think I have images of any of them. I I never really took anything very seriously, including myself. And so I think when the things were happening, these art shows, I love putting them together. I love designing my own show. I love putting the work into it. But when it came down to actually photographing anything, I have almost no record of anything. And that kind of freaks some people out. You know, I don't have a portfolio really. And I was saying to Sarah, if I do have images, they're probably on a little disposable Kodak camera in a box somewhere. So you won't see a lot of that, but I've really enjoyed doing the shows I've done. And then commissions. I do a ton of commission work, which I love. I love, love, love. And about 4 or 5 years ago, a friend of mine was working at a designer, and they were creating large design schemes for apartment buildings in Northern California, in these kind of fancy. And so they hired me a number of times to create the work that I do on a small scale on a larger scale. So you'll see a couple commissions that have multiples of my work in them. You can't tell the scale, but they're 5 feet by 5 feet. And those were really fun. But I also do personal commissions. Like if people are like, I have a box of stuff I don't know what to do with, like, send it to me. I'll do something with it for you. I talked about the messages from Molly, and then there's a project I'll talk a little more about at the end, and you'll recognize the pieces right away. They're these box pieces, and it's called the You Are Not Alone project. And ultimately there will be 100 pieces. I think I'm at like 80 something now. Ultimately be 100 pieces, but I started it a few years back when, again, a lot of this work that you see is maybe driven by the pandemic and kind of the state of the world. And I'll talk about that at the end too, but you'll see a number of those. A few photos from the Traveling Postal Club, which was really big when I lived in Los Angeles. A girlfriend and I, who's another collage artist, she and I started the Traveling Postal Club, and we promote mail art. And we set up, I had a really good friend who has since passed, who was the manager at the post office, Sigmund. And he let us set up in the post office because I was creating the cases. I was designing the cases in the post office, you know, those big glass cases you get in the post office. And nowadays they're mostly empty and kind of seriously depressing. I would go into our post office and I'd talk to Sigmund and say, I find those cases depressing. I own a lot of things about mail art and postal mail and stamps and that kind of thing. Can I do something with them? And he's like, whatever you want. So every month I would go in and I'd design or I'd decorate, whatever you want to call it, these 2 huge 6-foot glass cases. And it was thrilling for me. And I guess it was really thrilling for all the postal workers, because every time I came in to mail work, they'd be like, oh my God, Molly, come here. I got to tell you what just happened. Somebody just saw this, this, and this. And so that was really, really fun. And so besides that, my friend Anne and I would set up a 6-foot table in the lobby, and we'd encourage everyone that came through the front door of the post office to sit down and create some mail art and mail something to someone. I still teach workshops on mail art. I still do volunteer work around mail art, and I still highly encourage people to send out as much mail as possible, even with the cost of stamps. Um, I just think the the concept of mail is just so incredible and awesome that it still exists, that I want to keep it going as much as I can. Plus, I love getting mail and I love sending mail. Um, and then the last few photos you'll see are these textile banners, and that's what I've been really into making for the last year or two. I can show them to you in person here too, but um, I'm loving those. So they're all mixed vintage materials, and then I cut out quotes, and then I hand stitch the quotes on there. And finally, the majority of what I spend my time on these days are planning, creating, and teaching workshops. So you'll see just a few shots of people at different workshops I've held over the years, but I teach workshops a couple a month, and online and in person, and I love it. So that's probably why I do the most of it. Okay, I'll stop talking. I am going to share my screen and do this and oops, okay. This. Okay.
Molly, we can't hear the music, which is just fine, but if you wanted to talk, it would not be a problem.
Okay. Um, this is all kind of early work that I made. I did a whole show of those, and these are the boxes that I was talking about where I created people's lives. This is one of those really large pieces, that quilt piece that lives now in the lobby of the building. And I stitched all these leather letters, these quotes onto these old quilt pieces. Really hard to photograph. I love collaging in fabric too. These are the note pages I made. That was a show I had in San Francisco a few years ago, just before the pandemic, of all these stitched quotes. I did 100 pieces and made a rainbow across the wall. Oh, sorry.
Lightning round.
Ah. Let's see. I don't know how to stop it. Sorry. Dude, I don't know how to get back to it. Classic.
Can you quit the photos?
I yeah, again. Boom. Okay.
Nice.
So yeah, so okay.
There are a
So
couple questions that came in,
please,
if that now is a good time. Uh,
yeah, let's do it.
Shannon says that she loves the red stitching on your collage quotes and wonders what type of sewing machine, thread, and needle you use.
Dude, if you knew. Okay. So the sewing machine is probably 15 years old and it's from IKEA. My husband bought it for my birthday before I ever sewed a thing in my life. And it's I don't even know what it is. I'll look right now. Hang on. um oh, it's a brother. It's a brother. And let me tell you, don't let anyone else tell you that your machine can't do something because it's not a certain kind of machine. So all the leather that I sew, I went in one day to get a leather needle from the sewing store in downtown Los Angeles, and a woman heard me that I was going to be stitching on this little brother machine, leather, and she's like, "Oh, you can't do that." I said, what do you mean I can't do? Of course I can freaking do that." And she's like, "No, you can't do that. You need I don't think you do, man." So I will tell you, I think this is part of the reason why I always feel a little funny about talking about my work or me as an artist, is because I don't really follow a lot of those rules, right? So I often start a workshop and say, "All right, you guys, here's how the thing works and here's how you do it. If you want to do it this way, this is how I do it, but you can do it whatever." And if you start a question with, "Hey, Molly, can I?" I'm going to, yes, of course you can. That's my answer to everything. Of course you can. Of course you can. Because I did. So I just figure anybody can. Yeah.
Okay.
So this is what that stitching looks like. Is it backwards to you guys?
No.
Oh, okay. Um, so obviously I layer paper and this is a really simple one, but oftentimes I choose the paper layers according to what the quote is, or if I'm doing a commission, and someone says, "Oh, I want to make something for my brother and he had this thing happen," and then this, I often dig deep in all my paper and find pages or paper. Again, it's sort of like that secret thing. They might not get it. They might not see what I've chosen, but I specifically choose book pages and paper because of where it came from, what it says, what it means. And I think, and I could be totally wrong, dudes, but I think that the paper, all this vintage paper that I'm using, and then me infusing that, I think it's totally infused with the energy of the message that it's meant to send. I'm gonna start crying, but that's what I think. And so that's why I do it that way.
Nice.
Yeah.
There are lots of questions coming in. Thank you, everyone. Kamala, aka Rachel, would like to know, how do you deal with copyright when using quotes, and do you get permits for the public art? So we may have a legal mind asking these questions.
Oh God, Kamala, come on. Jeez Louise. No, I don't get any permits for the public art. That was that was just there. And to my knowledge, when I was last in LA, which was back in May, that plot is still blank. It's just a big dirt pile still. And so that was just a fence that was put up. And I figured if those guys, like if they ever did actually start building on that lot and they ripped down my sign, so be it. But I also am concerned about uh trash. I don't want things that I've made to end up like rolling down the street. And so more times than not, I end up going back and following the path of wherever I left messages, except ones in like library books, and picking the stuff up again. So like those messages from strangers, that all came back home with me eventually. That was up there for maybe a month, and then that all came back with me. Copyright around quotes. I never think about it. I just don't. Sorry.
Fair enough.
I hope we don't have any lawyers.
I,
I hope that's not illegal, but
Kathleen's curious about what neighborhood that post office was in LA.
oh, Atwater.
Mm.
So yeah, so Sigmund used to be the manager there, and we did it there. Um and I did those cases there. That was for about 2 years that we did that. And then um the Traveling Postal Club got kind of popular, and so we moved it over to the library. I was good friends with the women at the library, and I don't know if you guys feel this way, but the library and the post office have a lot like in common, similar connections. My love for the two of those things is as great as one another. So then we moved it over to the library, and we do it at the library. And it exists. The Traveling Postal Club also exists on Instagram still, where if people ever want to tag us on their mail art, we'll post your mail art. We did I think it was three major public projects. One was called Dear Los Angeles, where we asked people to create mail art and write a love letter to LA, and then they mailed it to my PO box at the time. And then we did a whole show around there. You saw where the postcards were strung. We did a show at a gallery in downtown Los Angeles, and then we did another show in the library. And then we did another one called Remember This Name, where we asked people to create mail art and write a story about a person that they admired, loved, connected with, even a bus driver that they'd see on their way to work. And then during the pandemic, we did one called Tell Me One Thing. And we really encouraged people to make mail art and send a postcard to someone and just telling them one thing. Today, I learned how to bake bread. Yesterday, my dog passed away. I'm sick of wearing a mask, whatever the things were.
No one's sort of taken up that mantle in your absence or to do.
Oh, there?
Yeah.
No, dude. So I have tried to keep it going here in Portsmouth, and Anne now lives in she lives somewhere in Northern California. I can't think where it is right now, the name of the town. But so we've done individual things here and there, but no, nobody kept it up in Atwater. And as I mentioned, Sigmund passed away, and he was our biggest cheerleader. He really wanted it to become. At one point, we were talking to we made it into the postal workers magazine that they their annual magazine. There was a whole article about what we were doing, and Sigmund really wanted to make it a national thing. He was like, we should be training people on how to do this. We should encourage people to be doing this. And when Sigmund passed, that whole system, kind of went away, unfortunately.
You need a champion.
Yeah. It's one of those things. Yeah.
We don't have to stop. It's 1:00. And I don't know if you wanted to talk at all about the storytelling and the way that your art has maybe morphed a little bit from the visual art pieces you've shown us.
Yeah. So I'll be brief, but I had Sarah and I talk a lot because because the first time we ever got on Zoom, we didn't get off, but for 3 hours later. So we talk a lot, and one of my difficult things, I think, is a couple years ago, a lot of things in my life changed, and one of those things was losing my dad, and it sort of put artwork on the back burner. And every time I go to make something, I'm like, is this important? Is this necessary? And I have a hard time justifying. So I've found myself doing less and less artwork, and more and more other things that bring me joy. So one of those things I mentioned was workshops. And what Sarah's talking about in storytelling is another thing I've always really loved. Is I love being on stage. It's probably one of my top two things, is I love being on stage. And so I've been really lucky to be able to tell stories over the last 5 or so years, stand up on a stage on a storytelling night and tell one particular story. I'm actually going to do it next week as well. There's a, a storytelling group here called, or a thing here called Long Story Short. And it happens every 3 months. And I got to tell a story about my dad in December, which was an incredible experience. And then connecting with people afterwards who all had a connection to that story and in their own personal way. And then next week, I'm telling a story. The theme is cold turkey. And I'm telling a story about how back in 2020, I had something pretty big happen, pretty major happen, and I had to drastically change something in my life, and I went cold turkey on some things, and I never saw that coming. So the cool thing is, most of those storytelling episodes are on YouTube somehow. Not great films, not the whole thing, because again, kind of like the art shows, I don't ever tend to prepare to have anything filmed or recorded or whatever. So I do have I have a link. I don't know if I can get it up in time. It might be too difficult to find it, but on YouTube, there's probably 4 stories I've told over the years that are on there that if storytelling interests you, that's it's something I really love. And so yeah, so that's I'm doing it next week too. And I can't get enough of it. I love it so much.
That's great. I tried to Google it real quick and I'm finding somebody else's wedding video. So,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah,
sure you
yeah.
all can take a few moments and look.
You know, it's linked in my Instagram, in my Instagram bio. I don't
Yeah,
know how it would
and
be hard.
that's a great way for people to find out about workshops, whether they're
Yeah,
in person, which is mostly in the Northeast, although
right.
occasionally you do come to San Francisco
And
uh,
Los Angeles. I do
and
both
Los
San Francisco
Angeles.
and LA when I'm out there every couple months. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Molly's website and her social media are great places to know where she's going to be.
Yeah.
And Molly,
And
thank you so
I
much.
have a little email list. I don't send them out that often, although I'm trying to get better at that. But I send a little newsy newsletter. So if you're interested in finding out about stuff that's happening, or the latest great documentary I just watched, or whatever,
I love your storytelling and how it has changed and morphed over time from different things visual into this more performance place. And as always, it is a joy to talk to you and hear you tell stories. So
Thanks.
thank you so much for taking the
Thanks.
time and for overcoming your fear of anything non-analog. Be with us on the
Dude,
Zoom.
right? I know. It's really tough, man. It's really tough. Hey, I want to say thank you so much to everybody that came and listened to me chatter. I really, really, really appreciate it. I want to see if I can see all of you. I'm gonna find out how I can do that. Oh, here, view. There. There. Okay, great. So thanks. Thanks so much for having me, Sarah, and thanks for letting me talk. And yeah, I loved it. So thank you very much for listening and watching and all that. And yeah, thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Please keep an eye out for the announcement about next month. There will be one on the, oh gosh, I can't think of the date right now. Keep an eye out. We'll do it again in October, and I hope you come back.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.